bad. We've talked about it. The idea of when you win free agency, you're under a lot of pressure there, and I think that's where he has positioned himself. Welcome into the Hot Read podcast for Friday, May the 24th. I'm your host, Easton Freeze, director of published content here at BroadwaySportsMedia.com. We're also brought to you by the 440 Podcast Network. You can follow me on social media at Easton Freeze. I am joined on this Thursday afternoon for a live taping by producer JT, who you can follow on social media at JT_Runke. JT, how are you?
I'm good. You know, I don't know what's up today, but the cicadas outside in Nashville today were actually pleasantly. It wasn't as bad today. So like, my day, for me personally, is really built on if the cicadas annoy me enough that day or not. And they haven't.
Maybe yesterday's downpours knocked enough of them out of the trees to their watery graves. Maybe that's what happened.
Hopefully, I think that's what happened. And you know what? I'm forever grateful for that.
Listen. Couple of football guys here, not cicada scientists. So we're musing. Did you see that today? Big show, big news on Will Levis today. Did you see this?
No, I didn't.
You didn't see the news? It came in at number 27, I believe, on Chris Sims' preseason quarterback rankings. Very big.
Did he really? That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's
he's
higher than I expected.
He's been all over the all over the Twitter timeline. That's been what people have been talking about on Will Levis today. It's crazy. I wonder what his day's been like. Anyways, we are today. We got an awesome topic. Very cool show for you. It's the under pressure draft. JT and I met this morning for our pre-show meetings. Like, what do we want to talk about? No OTAs today. It's time for some offseason topics. It's time to get editorial with it here on the show. And we decided on an under pressure draft, both for the Tennessee Titans and for the rest of the AFC South. Who or what is under the most pressure going into the 2024 NFL season? We've got 3 each for the Titans and 3 each for the rest of the AFC South. We are going to discuss and debate them today, an emphasis on debate, because I don't believe we've ever had a pre-show meeting, JT, more adversarial, more discontent, more on different pages than we did today. You and I see these things very differently, and there's going to be some arguing on today's show, so I'm looking forward to a fight. I have done my prep work, and I hope the folks watching with us live have brought their popcorn.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. I've never called you a bozo more in a pre-show meeting than I did today, and even though you've continued to double down on it, I'm interested to hear what you've said, because you've told me who you think is under the most pressure for the Titans, but I haven't heard the reasonings yet. So I'm excited to, first of all, react to that live. And second of all, continue to tell you why you are so wrong.
Yeah, we're entering the courtroom today. Both JT and I, we know who we are arguing for, but we don't know what the argument is. So we are looking to change each other's hearts and minds. And maybe that will happen today. I'm assuming my very strong, well-thought-out arguments are going to change JT's mind. I doubt he'll be changing mine at all. I'm a very open-minded fellow, but not to dumb arguments. And I don't usually revel in making you look stupid on the show, JT. You do it so well on your own anyways. I don't need to add to that. But today I'm gonna help make you look dumb. So let's dive into that in one moment. First, if you're with us live, we appreciate you being here, and we've got a great show planned for you. Do us a couple of favors. First, if you're watching on Twitter or on Facebook, leave those places. Head on over to Broadway Sports Media's YouTube page. It's Broadway Sports Media on YouTube. Find this live stream, and then you can join in the comment section. Derek and Joey and Stoney with the Sobros Network, who is asking for a literal fist fight today through the screen. I will punch my monitor. Like the videos of like 49ers fans after the Super Bowl where they're throwing TVs.
Is that were you doing practice on your phone? Is that why that's what happened to it?
My phone literally just died minutes before we got on the show. It won't turn on, and I think I've realized in the last 15 minutes that I have a problem because I feel naked, and like there's a general level of discontent within my heart right now that nobody can reach me.
Yeah,
it's made worse by the fact that the screen is dead, but the phone is not dead. So every notification, every text message, it's all still buzzing and coming through. I know that things are happening, but I cannot see them, and it's driving me mad. And I can't like go and retweet the show on different accounts like I usually do. So, hey, help us out if you're watching live. Hit retweet, hit like, hit subscribe if you're on YouTube and you're not subscribed already. Almost to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. Very big milestone that we are almost to. So help us out in that regard if you're not subscribed already. But if you're on Twitter, do us a favor today of all days, hit retweet for us. JT, let's just dive into it. And I let you go first in the Titans pressure draft. I went first in the AFC South pressure draft. So without further ado, here's our under pressure draft for the Tennessee Titans. Who's your number one overall pick, JT, for the person most under pressure heading into the 2024 NFL season?
So really interesting for me to pick one here, because I like when we were talking this morning, I have such a different idea of truly what's under pressure right now with this team than maybe you do. And I think that goes to show, especially how we're talking about this. But I think that one of the players on this team who is under the most pressure in this preseason process and into the season is Nicholas Petit-Frere. I think when you look at a guy who is vying for that right tackle spot with a lot of guys who probably, are other options at that spot who may also be vying for that spot, Nicholas Petit-Frere has not really had a consistent, go at the right tackle spot in such a long time. You look at, he showed flashes in his first year with the team in his rookie season, although down the stretch, those rookie moments really started to show for him. Then last year, he really did not do himself any favors with the gambling suspension, and then bringing himself into that fold of an atrocious offensive line right there for the rest of the season. He did not help himself either. Now he's also continuing to be hurt with that same injury that kind of sidelined him for the rest of the season. And so this offseason is a huge one for him, as that spot is for him to lose. And Titans, with Bill Callahan bringing in guys like Leroy Watson and, having Jalen Duncan on the roster who could probably vie for that spot, it's going to be his to lose. And I think he may have a really decent shot of losing that spot because of what we've seen over the past couple of months with his play. So for that reason, I think Nicholas Petit-Frere, if he, doesn't meet expectations, there is a real possibility that he could get usurped. And, going into year 3, I know he was a 3rd round, developmental prospect, but you would want to see more from him right now.
That is a crazy first overall pick. I think that's a really insane choice. Is he under pressure this year? Sure. Is he under the most pressure? I think that's crazy. And I think you kind of made my argument for me there at the end. Is he really under that much more pressure than Dylan Radins, than Jalen Duncan, than Leroy Watson, than John Ojokwu? Who is writing NPF in at right tackle right now with anything other than a faint dry erase marker that can easily be wiped away when nobody's looking? That I don't think it's his to lose personally. So maybe that's where we're kind of off base. Is he probably the favorite for it? I'd give him a slight favorite, but frankly, I think it's going to be really about who shows up in camp. And, based on his injury history and last season, not really getting much of a chance to the gambling, he's not been able to get out there and be with the team for some really important periods of the season. You mentioned him being a third round pick. I think that 3 years removed from being drafted, that draft stock has worn off a decent amount. And I just see all of these guys. I see NPF and Radins and Duncan and Watson and Ojokwu all kind of in this basket of guys that don't have a starting job and are in the running to earn one, that if they, the guy who ends up winning it, I'd imagine would easily be replaced if he did not perform well. So I don't see him as having that much pressure.
I think he does, considering, what you look at this line, the rest of the line is really set. They have the potential this year to kind of blow Titans offensive lines of years past out of the water. And, Nicholas Petit-Frere, out of those guys we just mentioned, Dylan Radins, who personally, I don't think, if he has to move over to right tackle, that shows me that Nicholas Petit-Frere might as well just hang it up right there, because this team already sees
he can't even be a backup in the league. He has to retire.
Dylan Radins is currently being looked at by this team as a right guard. This team.
But haven't you heard the legend of Dylan Radins versus the San Francisco 49ers in prime time, where he actually ended Nick Bosa's career? 0 pressure, 0 sacks. He was the greatest tackle to ever grace God's earth. Are you not familiar with this
Oh,
tale?
I am, but at the same time, one major amazing performance does not execute the fact
It
that
wasn't
with
even
Bill
that amazing, by the
Callahan
way.
on the roster and on the coaching staff now, thinking that this guy is a right guard, I see no really avenue for Dylan Radins to ever make it back there. But if he did, that would
How can you say there's no avenue? They all
because
have a blank slate.
this team has already told them.
No, we asked Bill Callahan the other day, like, what did you think about these guys playing right tackle? And his answer, without saying it, was like, I don't know these cats. They're going to have to prove it to me. No, like, just I think it's going to be purely like just eye tests. I don't know your name. I don't know much about you. Like, maybe I've watched some of the tape, whatever, but you're going to earn no prerequisite information in his brain in terms of who he wants to go with. They're going to have to go out there and earn it. So why doesn't Dylan Radins have just as good a chance as MPF?
Because we've seen for 3
You just think
years
he's not
now.
good?
I don't think Dylan Radins has what it takes to play on the outside reliably.
And you think MPF does for sure? Are we positive?
I think he has a lot of better chance to do that than Dylan Radins ever did. I'm not going to look at one game from Dylan Radins where he was just playing absolutely on fire and put that over.
Again, he wasn't. I don't want to. We don't need to promulgate this lie.
I'm aware.
It was a fine showing as a rookie.
Over the consistency of flashes that we've seen from Nicholas Petit-Frere. And maybe that's just because I think that if Nicholas Petit-Frere plays up to his potential this year, I think that this offensive line can be one of the better ones in the NFL this year from the get-go and can absolutely drastically change what the Tennessee Titans identity on the offensive line has looked like for the past 3 years. So maybe I am putting a little bit more stock into a Nicholas Petit-Frere who's been with this team, has survived through this kind of nightmarish, hellish offensive line situation, and now really gets his opportunity to show that he still does belong with this offensive line group. So I think with that all being said, he does have a lot of pressure on him to actually make an impact this season.
And maybe that's where we define pressure differently, because for me, pressure is a lot less about what you have to gain and a lot more about what you stand to lose. And I don't think he stands to lose a whole lot. I think he's like not got a whole lot right now. You're right that he could earn a starting tackle job in the NFL and get himself paid. Like, yes, he stands to earn a lot, but so do these other guys. Technically, on paper, they may not be the favorites to do it, but like they have just as much an opportunity to do it as MPF does. So I'm not gonna lie, you didn't really change my mind on that one, but maybe you did. The folks that are, if you're listening live with us, let us know in the comments who you think makes a better point on MPF being under pressure this year. Here's my first one, JT. And I already know you gave me a weird look when I said this is my first overall pick. I don't think MPF is under nearly as much pressure as his new coach, Bill Callahan. I think Bill Callahan is under as much, if not more, pressure this season than anybody else in the Titans organization. And here's the reason why. The primary point here is that the legend of Bill Callahan over the last 2 months has grown to the point of there being so little margin for error for him. There's a reason that you and I on this show have been preaching he's a fantastic coach, but he's not a miracle worker. And you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to realize that some guys just don't cut it. You're going to have to realize that coaching offensive linemen, it is a slow process. This is not an overnight thing necessarily. And I think when you compare him to the past offensive line coaches the Titans have had, not only does he come in with the reputation that precedes him, and he, people are talking about him as this masterful guru, the best offensive line coach in the NFL, not even remotely in the same league as the past couple of guys that have been O-line coaches for the Titans. He also comes in without the plausible deniability that I think those past coaches had, with the minimal talent to work with in that room. Like, Bill doesn't really have much of an excuse when you look at the people he has to work with. You've got arguably the best lineman that was available in the 2023 draft in Peter Skoronski, second-year player, surgery behind him, clearly bulked up, clearly stronger, clearly more comfortable in his role as a guard than the tackle position where he played in college. He should be a good lineman under your tutelage. And you got a top 10 tackle in the 2024 draft. Yeah, he's a rookie, but you handpicked him. It was a somewhat controversial selection at the time, and he's being given the benefit of the doubt. The Titans organization is being given the benefit of the doubt for that pick. Primarily, JT, what was the number one thing folks were saying? Well, if Bill Callahan likes the guy, who am I to say that was the wrong pick? But that is laying at the feet of Bill Callahan. And then they went and signed a young veteran center in Lloyd Cushenberry that is supposed to be a bona fide starter, a plus starter for them. And so 3/5 of this offensive line at minimum, even if they have, like, if it's a disaster at right tackle, disaster at right guard, 3/5 of this offensive line is undeniably talented enough, is being brought in under the auspices of expecting a minimum level of performance where, like, in the NFL, when 3/5 of your O-line is talented enough to work, that is enough for you to function as a team just fine. You could have how many NFL lines where it's like 5 out of 5 guys, these guys would be starters on any team? It's not many of them, right? Like, you got to work with what you've got in the NFL. And the Titans in the recent past have had like 2, 1, 0 starting offensive linemen. You got 3 now. And so the ultimate point here is that not only is he under the pressure we've given him by his reputation, but also the Titans offense, like, that's the focus of this season heading in, that it's going to be different. It's going to be revolutionary. Look at these weapons they brought in. Will Levis here too. Brian Callahan. Oh, I can't wait for the system, right? Who's responsible for the straw that stirs that offensive drink? It's Bill Callahan's offensive line. All of the work that they have done, the team has done to this roster for this year to work with Will Levis, for this year to work with the new scheme, it can't properly function without his unit improving in a hurry. So that's why I think Bill Callahan is under a significant amount of pressure this season.
To say that Bill Callahan is under pressure is one of the most heinous things I've ever heard in my entire life.
Did you have that scripted out? Was that going to be the response no matter what I said?
I think just uttering the words that Bill Callahan is under pressure, first of all, it is absolutely diabolical and disgraces his name.
I just laid out a fantastic argument, and it just,
Bill
I think,
Callahan,
it went in one ear out the other.
Here's why I think your argument is null and void, because Bill Callahan, I just don't see him failing with what he's done right now.
Well, that is such an unfalsifiable response.
When you look
he's not under
context,
pressure because he can't fail. Huh?
Because when you look at the context, and maybe this is my year to do it because you did it last year and you got absolutely burned on this, and maybe it's now mine.
I'm not doing it.
I do not
I'm
see
sure as hell I'm
world,
not doing it.
I do not see a conceivable world where this offensive line this year is any worse than it was last year. And
sure.
I know that you said that to Mike Herndon last year, and guess what? It absolutely blew up in your
I did not
face.
say it to Mike Herndon. I said it to everybody repeatedly for months.
Okay.
Get
well,
that right.
let me say that to me now. I'm saying it to everyone as well.
Okay.
I do not see a world in which this offensive line is worse than last year. I think that this line, and it's a big key distinction right there, is because in years past, the guys that they have brought in for these offensive line, you are right that it is a little different this year, because the offensive line, players that they have brought in years past for the offensive line coaches probably were not necessarily decisions made by the offensive line coach.
No.
I think a weight that Bill Callahan has to bring in the guys that he knows can work because he has the experience and he has the years on years of doing this, I think speaks volumes. You look at a guy like Lloyd Cushenberry, who when they talked to him about Lloyd, he was over the moon ecstatic about bringing this guy in, saying we have to have this guy, a young guy who, is going to work in the Bill Callahan scheme that he almost feels like he wanted in Cleveland before he was drafted, right? You talk about a guy, J.C. Latham. You said, it's not really the sexy pick, but it's Bill Callahan's guy because Bill Callahan knows what he wants. And we've seen this time and time again. You go back in the last decade, and I can look at 2 times. We've talked about this the entirety of this offseason of ways that he, has done this before, bringing in, going into that Dallas Cowboys line, with the young talent that they had, also having a hand in handpicking that in 2012 to 2014, where we were arguably talking about the Dallas Cowboys as the best offensive line in the entire league. Go to the Cleveland Browns, where he brings in the Alabama guy. I'm blanking on his name now. I'm getting Tristan Wirfs in my head. Yes, in
Cleveland. Jedrick Wills.
Jedrick Wills. There it is. Bringing him in. As Tony says in the comments here, bringing Jedrick Wills and changing him to the left side, and they now have a top 5 unit there. Bringing in these guys, you talked about this weekend, where Bill Callahan's talking about bringing in guys like Leroy Watson, these guys on the cheap that may have not been viable starters, but he has something that works in his scheme. And so for that reason, I think just looking at, the experience that Bill Callahan has and, what we think that he can do, I really don't see a world where he can fail, because we talk about when Bill Callahan was brought in by the Titans. It's really crazy to say that when Bill Callahan was brought in during that Senior Bowl week, we talked about how, oh my God, what a huge, yeah, that's fair. What a huge.
I win. He admitted I win, by the way.
Is that okay? Whatever. Well, if the second choice is Bill Callahan, I don't know if anybody's going to win at all.
Can I defend myself against your rebuttal here?
One more thing.
Finish. I'll let you finish.
During the Senior Bowl week, we talked about how drastically of an upgrade this was,
right, for
Bill Callahan to come in, and how much Cleveland is going to miss that dude. To now say that he's under the pressure that, if this doesn't work out, like, this is a mind that has been working on this stuff for the past 25 years.
Yes.
If it doesn't work in the beginning, I don't think that's a problem whatsoever, because like you said, it takes time. So if anybody's going to think that after 2 or 3 weeks of the NFL season, that Bill Callahan is a bust because this line isn't working together yet, I think is absolutely insane.
Okay, I think your argument's a poor one, and here's why. All I'm hearing is not that he's not under pressure. I'm hearing a lot of, he's not under pressure because I don't think he's going to do poorly. That's not how that works. Like,
yes,
Patrick Mahomes is under a lot of pressure with the Chiefs. That's not because everyone thinks he's going to fail. It's because if he's not good, you got problems. And as Strike says here in the comments, his track record means, this is Strike saying, his track record in terms of Bill Callahan means that if players fail, it's on the players. Let's think through some scenarios that could go wrong with this offensive line, right? If it's week 8 and we're like, man, Lloyd Cushenberry has been dreadful. It's been a problem. The interior of the offensive line, it's not working, and it's in large part because of Lloyd Cushenberry. You tell me we're not going to be then saying, hey, Bill, this was your guy. Like, what's going on here? What is the disconnect? And it's not that we know this guy can't play center in the NFL, because we saw him for 4 years with the Denver Broncos. He can play center in the NFL. Okay, let's take it to the left tackle position. He's a rookie, so like there's room for this. But if we get to near the end of the season and it's like, man, maybe year 2 will be lights on for JC Latham. But so far in year 1, it has been stagnant. I don't know if this is going to work. Really, I don't see a whole lot of growth, or it's been so up and down. I don't know what the deal is here. We're not going to say, hey, Bill, that's your guy. What is the issue here? What's going on here? If they get to week 17 and this line as a whole is still, bottom 5 pass protection, and I'm not saying it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be. I think this is going to go well. I'm just saying, in a world in which it does not work, he is going to be the one who is scrutinized. Not the fact that, he's got no players to play with. Not the fact that, these players stink. If it is these players stink, they're his players. They're the guys he went and got. So he's the one that's going to be responsible for that.
And that's just the big assumption that a guy who has this much history of having a successful offensive line group finally fails because it's the Tennessee Titans. I think that's what
and that's going to be Cope. That's going to be Cope.
That's the only reason I think you're saying that, because why have we? How can we look back at the history of what he's done to poor offensive line groups and seen him work his magic, and now say that it's not there? There's a really big reason that it might not work this year. Like, this is the same scenario that he has been in time and time again. And for him to say that he can't do it now because he might be like in a different situation.
I'm not saying he can't do it. I'm saying he's under pressure because the fact that you are so certain he's going to do it, I think, is further proving my point that if he does not, it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a really big problem
because the Titans are definitely looking to contend in 2024. Like, this is a team that is back on track. I think this is still...
Does that excuse their offensive line getting no better? Certainly not.
Well, I don't think that's even in the realm of possibility, because once again,
said they're for sure getting better. I forgot.
They are for sure getting better. So, okay. There's just... To call Bill Callahan having pressure on him when I am trusting him fully to know what he is doing is just how I think that is just an insane argument.
Okay, well, we're 30 minutes in. We've got other things to talk about. So we'll move on. I made my case. Folks in the comments seem to be siding with you. I'm afraid that you're all mistaken, but that's okay. Who, JT, is your second pick, third overall in the 2024 Titans pressure draft?
My second one here, and the third one overall.
No, hang on. I need you to say this with a straight face.
Yeah,
I just want to see it.
I'm about to.
Okay.
The wide receiver on this team that is under the most pressure this offseason is the training camp darling himself, Kyle Phillips. Because I think, and you think this as well, and you told me this earlier today, that there is apparently no chance that this man now makes the roster.
This is a gross misquoting. I said no such thing.
Okay. Here's why I think Kyle Phillips is under the most pressure out of all these guys. It's because he's looking outside of his spot now when he really didn't deserve to have that in the first place, in my opinion. This is a guy that I think, yes, has the injury history to have a lot of question marks about him. However, if you look at the guys that they have brought in and drafted, Jaquan Jackson, they still have a Kyrus Jackson on the roster, Colton Dow, these guys, they also have suffered a lot from injury, the injury bug the past season and a half, 2 seasons here. Kyle Phillips, for better or for worse, out of those kind of guys, have been kind of a little bit more dependable for him and this offense the past couple of seasons, or past 2 seasons. When he's healthy, he has been shown to be a playmaker. You go back into that Miami game where Will Levis was driving down the field. Kyle Phillips is a huge reason that the Titans were able to come back in that game. And so now you look at Kyle Phillips, who has been with this team and has really fought to actually make an impact on this team. Now looking down the barrel of a team that has Tyler Boyd on it now, who is going to play that slot position for this team and be the starter. You look at Jaquan Jackson, who basically has already usurped him in the return game. So where does that leave him? Like you said, on the outside. And so I think that, with how this team may carry their wide receivers, because I think there's a notion that this team with Brian Callahan now might carry 7 or 8 receivers. I went back and looked at the Cincinnati Bengals roster at the beginning of the season last year and the year before that. They actually only carried 6 to start the season. This is actually
really
very surprising to me. I thought too, because I think of all the names that are around there: Charlie Jones, Andre Josephus, Trenton Irwin, Trent Taylor. Like all these backup guys behind Tyler.
Were some of those guys not on the roster to begin?
They were not on the roster to be in a year or two there. So with that being said, there's really, I don't think that many spots outside of the core 5, and then you have to assume that Jaquan Jackson is going to make the roster, which to me says that Kyle Phillips has to.
I think the top 6 are in stone. Don't you?
I mean,
Ridley, Hopkins, Boyd, Burks are all obviously making the roster. Again, assuming Burks is still on the team, but if he is, which we think he is, they're making the roster. NWI is making this roster. Jaquan Jackson is making this roster. I don't see any world in which those 6 guys are not on this roster. And so I think it's a fight for the 7th spot.
For the 7th spot, if they keep one there. If they keep a 7th spot, which is why I think that Kyle Phillips has the most pressure and the most to gain or lose this offseason and through training camp.
So I think that's a decent argument on your part, much better than MPF, but I'm still going to try to dismantle it here. You say there at the end he has the most to gain or lose. Does he have much to lose? Like, let's go back to World War II, right? Like the Axis powers during 1940, 1941, the heart of the war. How much pressure were they under to lead? A lot of pressure, right? Super under pressure. By 1943, how much pressure were the Axis powers under? None. You know why? Because they lost the war, man. And I think Kyle Phillips, how much pressure that's my question. How much pressure can you really be? The battle of pressure when you've already lost the war. And with Tyler Boyd on this roster, listen, anybody that knows me and knows my coverage of this team knows that I have been arguably irresponsibly high on Kyle Phillips the past 2 years. I mean, he is the training camp practice warrior. He is mesmerizing when you watch him on the practice field. That being said, I like to deal in reality, man. That's my primary focus. And if I'm being honest, with Tyler Boyd around, are we sure he's on the roster in a couple months? Now, I did not text you he's for sure not on the roster, but as I just pointed out, I think the top 6 guys are set. And now that you say that they only, in Cincinnati, they've been keeping 6 every year. I'm starting to entrench myself even more into the, I don't know if he's making the roster, man. It's like Kyle Phillips, he's not contributing on special teams. He's not versatile in his deployment. He's a slot only guy. He's not consistently available. Not necessarily his fault, but that's just the reality of it. Why would you keep 2 slot only guys on this roster in Tyler Boyd and Kyle Phillips? I don't think they're doing it. And so I don't know if you can say he's under pressure if it's Jover. It's never been more over for Kyle Phillips right now than it has been in the past, I'm afraid.
It's hard for me to see you elevate an NWI above a Kyle Phillips when they were realistically in the same situation. What does Kyle Phillips have to lose? He's been on the roster for 2 years. He has a roster spot to lose.
Do you know what NWI has done the past 2 years? Score multiple touchdowns. You know what Kyle Phillips has never done in the NFL? Find the end zone. Not once.
Can we attribute that to Kyle Phillips, or can we attribute that to the offensive coordination and deployment of Kyle Phillips?
Well, it's partially that, and it's partially because the other half the time he's not available to be out there. So, listen, I love Kyle Phillips, and I would like to be wrong about this, but I don't know if he's under that much pressure. That's all I'm saying. I don't know.
Considering that, going into 3 months ago, before Tyler Boyd is on this roster, before they draft anybody, Kyle Phillips is reasonably still saying, hey, man, this year might be different. Like, Kyle Phillips may finally carve himself out a role. And now to say that he can't even look to fight and feel the pressure to fight for a spot, and just kind of be saying that Kyle Phillips is done. He's in the water. It's over. And it's May 23rd, I think is pretty insane to say.
Okay. All right. Well, we can move on to my, I don't disagree with you as much on that one as I do with the MPF. I think there's some validity to that one, but I find it interesting that we're starting this draft and the most pressure for this season are 2 guys we're not even sure are going to be starters, let alone on the roster for you. So I think that's interesting. Z-Dane, please stop. The comments are as unhinged today as the Twitter timeline has been outrageous today. My second pick, 4th overall here in the Tennessee Titans 2024 pressure draft. You've gone with the little names. I'm going with the big names here. I think it's Rand Carthon, and here's why. I think Rand Carthon is under a tremendous amount of pressure this year and going forward as long as he's the GM of the Tennessee Titans. And the number one reason, JT, I want to take you back to the discussion we had a lot this winter. This idea, and it's one of I believe it's an original take of mine because I've not heard it elsewhere. So I'm proud of it. And if somebody else has said it, I apologize for stealing it from that person. And don't tell me because I would prefer to think it's mine because it makes me happy. There is a natural cycle when it comes to the mob of fan bases coming for different, like the Grim Reaper of a fan base coming for your soul in the NFL. It cycles between 3 entities ultimately. It's the head coach, it's the quarterback, and the GM. And that cycle dictates Rand Carthon is next on the hot seat. Whether that comes soon or later, he's going to be the next one. If you look at the timeline, the last grouping here was John Robinson, Ryan Tannehill, and Mike Vrabel. That was the last at each of those positions. They have all since been replaced. First, it was John Robinson, fired in November 2 seasons ago. They replaced him with Rand Carthon in that spot in the offseason. That was before this past season began, right? That was last spring. Ryan Tannehill, not necessarily replaced for his performance as much as just getting hurt, can't stay on the field. Okay, it's time to get the rookie in there. He's been replaced. And then after him, most recently, is the head coach. Mike Vrabel gets fired at the end of the season. You bring in Brian Callahan. Will Levis is certainly still in his honeymoon period. Brian Callahan, we're going to talk about this more in a minute. He's never been more of a honeymoon period than for him right now. It's Carthon next. And even if you love what they did in free agency this year, and you love how they did it, which I think I do, and I do on both of those fronts, they still did it, right? And they spent, they blew their load financially. They have spent the money that was there to spend. And they did the whole win free agency thing, got all the big names, spent the most money. They spent big on the kinds of players that, historically speaking, those signings earn you the most scrutiny if they don't work out. And then not to mention, he's already used up his my guy card at quarterback, arguably. I don't know necessarily because historically speaking, there's a doomsday clock with GMs, right? That if you draft a quarterback in the top 10, in the top 5, you have started the clock on yourself. No matter how well you do elsewhere in roster building, if that guy does not work out, you're going to lose your job. That has been the case for pretty much everybody besides like Joe Douglas in New York with Zach Wilson, and he's hanging on by a thread to the Aaron Rodgers debacle. Generally speaking, you lose your job there. When you draft the guy at 33, I don't know if that's the case. Like, I don't know if that's going to get you fired if the second round pick doesn't work. But, they're tooling around him like you would with an Anthony Richardson, like a CJ Stroud, like the exact same thing. You're building up a team for him to be the guy. And so I think all of that lends itself to it's his team now. This is his product. They have done some things that from a national narrative standpoint can look really bad if the Titans are bad. We've talked about it. The idea of when you win free agency, you're under a lot of pressure there. And I think that's where he has positioned himself.
Once again, that being your second pick to me is it is a good second pick for you. For me, I never even thought for a second that Ran Carthon could be considered in this situation. Ran Carthon this offseason. Imagine you go into a new job. You get a new job and you go through your training, you go through your onboarding, you meet all of the people, you start to off of training finally and get to work for this company. And then imagine if that company basically says, we're just going to blow up this company. Company's gone. Bye. New company. Here it is.
Where are you going with this?
That's exactly basically kind of what the Titans did.
Exactly. Basically kind of. That's a crazy de-escalation right there. Say it with your chest, JT.
The Titans brought in Ran Carthon,
right,
and then proceeded to blow everything up around him to give him the reins to make this the team that he and for a further extent, Amy Adams Strunk wants to make this team. Ran Carthon even said himself, and we've taken this a bunch of different ways, but this really kind of was his first draft that he was truly the guy. Last year he comes in at the early portion of the draft cycle with this team, and he works and collaborates with this team, a word we haven't heard in a long time, but collaborates with this front office, and it probably wasn't all of him. He wasn't the guy running the show back then, as we've come to learn now. Now, with all of that out of the way, this truly was Ran Carthon's first crack at it, if you like, for better or for worse. Mm-hmm. And so to say that Ran Carthon is now immediately under pressure when everything around him kind of was blown up so that he can continue.
It has begun. He's under pressure now. I agree.
I just don't think that it can be said in the first year of this kind of.
So when does the pressure start? When does it start now that it's his thing now? When does it begin? You get a 1 year grace period?
I think you look past 1 year, and because like we've said, this team is not looking to contend right away. I think that's something that we have said is pretty evident from day one, despite bringing in L'Jarius Sneed, despite bringing in Calvin Ridley, despite bringing in all of these like known commodity veterans. This team still has a lot to work on, especially if you look at the defensive side of the ball. They're bringing in a lot of young rookie guys to play key pivotal parts at the linebacker position. There's still question marks to be had with the front seven as well as the safety position. Like, that defense is not fully ready to become the Titans defense of old yet and be one of the top units in the league. You look at the offensive side of the ball, like we've said, this offensive line may take a year or so to get where it really needs to be under the guidance of Bill Callahan. You look at some of the skill position players. Tony Pollard is nice, but we need to see Tyjae Spears take another year jump. What is the plan?
Oh, you mean the guy that he drafted? That guy? The guy that Ran Carthon is responsible for?
One of the many guys that he is responsible for, sure.
Right, but one of his guys,
however, we need to see him take a next step there. What are they going to do with the wide receiver position, past this year? I think those are all questions that are, we take a year from now, and then we can assess how he handles those situations. But to say right now that what he's doing kind of just off of the cusp of, the John Robinson mistakes, now it is his show. I don't think we have enough to say that Ran Carthon can be under pressure because we haven't seen it fail yet. How does he respond to that? And I think
Here you
that's
go
where
again.
we
This
can start to
idea that
see.
because they haven't failed, they're not under pressure is crazy. And I'll just say this, and then we can move on because we are really going along today. Shrike saying that Rand is in his second year. He traded up for quarterback. He's not under fireable pressure yet. I'm not saying he's under fireable pressure. What I am saying is it is undeniable that even more than most other GMs, because of the way that this offseason has transpired, because of the amount of resources they have had and then spent, the success of the Tennessee Titans in 2024 rides very heavily, very squarely on Rand Carthon's shoulders. The decisions he made will be what dictate how this season goes. And like, if you want to, like, well, it's all the GMs. I don't think like Chris Ballard up in Indianapolis. They decided let's bring the whole team back except we'll add Joe Flacco. Like that'll be the whole thing, and then we'll get AD Mitchell and we'll get Latio and we'll call it a day. Same team. I'd say that the pressure is less on him and more on the coaches because like the idea was they all got together. They said let's bring in the same guys. We'll coach them up. Like don't worry, the coaches have got this. The guys we have are fine. I don't think like obviously they're guys he drafted or the guys that he signed, and so there's pressure there for sure. And with him, there's the whole his quarterback needs to work out. That's a separate thing. With Rand Carthon, it's so different. It's like coaches be damned maybe because these guys you brought in, they either are worth their big dollar contracts or they're not, and that's something that I think within 1 year, within 2 years, we're going to look back either very fondly or very negatively, or I guess maybe with supremely mixed emotions on some of these choices, these contract choices, either amazing masterclass stroke of genius or like we did with the Patriots after they had that incredible Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry. There was the quarterback or the wide receiver from the Raiders who I'm blanking on who he can't catch. I can't forget his name. Like they went and spent a ton. No, it was the guy. Remember that?
Nelson
Remember
Aguilar?
that? Oh, Aguilar. Yeah. The guy that like after a fire on local news, he's like, I caught unlike Nelson Aguilar. That guy. That's what I know him by. We look back on that in a really negative light, and that's the kind of light I think we can look back on Rand Carthon if this does not go well, and that's pressure to me. So, yeah. Okay, let's move. Final piece, and then we can move on.
I was just going to say, I think the difference between GMs here is that the Colts are in a different place than the Titans really are right now. The Colts were this close to making contention and realized that they have something here if it can all be put together. And so that's why you bring back a lot of those guys because they know that this can work if everything goes right. So therefore, when you bring back those guys, of course there's not going to be pressure because you saw how close you can get to the results if a few different things. Literally, if one pass is caught differently, we're talking about a whole different offseason for the Colts, right? So I think that's, and you look at where the Titans are, which once again, I don't think that they're truly ready to go in 2024. I think that's where the disconnect is.
Okay. Well, as Strike, and I understand here, Strike saying as soon as Amy officially chose him and gave him the reins, the pressure clock started. That's where I'm at. That this is 100% where I'm at. It's still high, but if they aren't competitive, he's on the hot seat. That's pressure. So yeah, Shrike, you agree with me. I understand that. And I think JT's wrong, but you know what? Let's let him redeem himself with his third and final pick here in the Titans pressure draft. JT, who's your last pick for the person in the Titans organization under the most pressure in 2024?
My third and final pick, I'm gonna go with the main lady herself. Amy Adams Strunk, I think, is under the most
your best pick by far. Best pick.
Because of the way this kind of Houston Tennessee Titans rivalry has kind of built itself up.
That's the angle you're going with?
Is
the petty off-field rivalry?
Not
where I was going with this.
I think, well, that's just one of the parts. I think that's where it started and why she is now under the most pressure. You see last year with the uniform debacle, maybe a definite reason of why Mike Vrabel finally kind of soured in her mind last year after the Houston game. I think that is a really big thing here. Now she realizes, and we all realize, that these things matter a lot to her. You kind of look at what the Titans are doing, or the Texans are now doing with their new uniforms, making those kind of off-brand
the Columbia Coke Blues.
Yes,
yeah,
the Coke Blues, as you call them. Those are something that and the comments that the Houston Texans ownership has made have now kind of reignited this rivalry between these two fan bases that may have not been as strong in years past there. You look at that as well as a new stadium on the way where things are not going to be great around the stadium for the
checkmate from Stoney here. No one can fire Amy Adams Strunk. You're wrong.
True, but people can stop watching, I think, is the main point there. That, with a new stadium on the way and with the parking situation next year, if this team doesn't put an entertaining product out on the field, I think that that's going to show in her decision making. We've seen kind of the at sometimes backwards way of making her decisions. So I think there's a lot of pressure for Amy Adams-Strunk, who has kind of gotten to a point now where, you know, you look at the John Robinson firing, you look at the Mike Vrabel firing, and it's been in a very weird way. Now she has kind of put this on a direction that she wants. Let's see how she reacts to this when it doesn't go so well. Or if it does, like, she has a lot of pressure on her because she has now made a bunch of decisions with putting Rand Carthon in that seat. And now it is time to see how those will pay off.
Okay, this is your best pick, and at first I was disappointed because there's a real argument here to be made, and you weren't making it, but then you finally got to it at the end. And I hadn't considered the Houston angle. I think you got something there, but I think you buried the lead on what I'm going to kind of elaborate here and mostly agree with you on. The way that she has been a decision maker for this team from the very top, being aggressive and forward thinking, generally speaking, is fantastic in the NFL in terms of ownership. It looks great on paper until you start going in the wrong direction, right? And so you look back on what she's done recently, the big moves. Okay, you move on from Mike Mularkey in 2017, despite making the playoffs that year, was a bold move at the time, but you hire Vrabel, proven to be a wise decision at the time. Mularkey's ceiling was he kind of reached that ceiling, he'd capped out. It was time to move up in the world with Mike Vrabel, and you did that. Then you move on from John Robinson in the middle of the season in 2022. It was a bold, aggressive move at the time. Hired Rand Carthon, who is yet to truly prove himself as the right move. So all indicators so far are that he's certainly an upgrade over what John Robinson was doing there at the end of his tenure, but proven to be a great GM. Not quite. There's no way for him to have so far. You need time for that. All of these kinds of moves she's made, they were anticipatory, right? They were anticipating a ceiling of a guy, a ceiling for the franchise, and trying to upgrade, not accepting mediocrity. And again, on paper, that aggressive forward thinking attitude is fantastic. But when you make one misstep, like it is a risky, high risk, high reward situation when you're operating like that, because one misstep, man, and people they'll stop trusting your decision making. If it's proven that she botched this head coaching hire with Brian Callahan, and it's not working. He's fired within 2 years. The next guy that we bring in for, the Tennessee Titans, do you think she's going to be at that podium and folks are going to look at her with no skepticism? Right? If Rand Carthon proves to be a complete and utter bust, no better than John Robinson, time proves it that way. Again, I don't think he's going to be, but if that's the case, the pressure is going to be on her big time, and folks are going to question her. They may not question her dedication to the team, and it's not going to be like a David Tepper situation in Carolina where you're just hated by the fans for non-football reasons, but people are going to question her ability to make football decisions. And as soon as she loses that validity as the controlling owner of the team, that's a big deal. And so she's under a lot of pressure to keep that. And I think she's put herself under that pressure by making these aggressive decisions. I agree with being aggressive here, but again, you're all in at the poker table, and you better not be bluffing is all I'm saying.
I think that's a great way to put it at the end there. You make it's kind of like those home poker games where it's like, I'm going all in. You're
only 20 down, so it's like not the end of the world if you get screwed.
It's the unwise, and maybe that's why, who's going to fire Amy Adams-Strunk, right? Who's going to, what's going to happen there? Why can't I just keep doing that? But the way that the decision making has gone has led to now something that could possibly be a better future and outcome for this Tennessee Titans team, which means it better work this time.
Okay, here's my third and final pick for the 2024 Tennessee Titans pressure draft, JT. I think our list would be silly and dumb if it did not include Will Levis. So Will Levis is my third pick here. And the argument is relatively simple. I would not have put him on this list 3 months ago. But this team has done well in the offseason to give him no excuses, which is a very good, very responsible thing. It's going to make his life much easier. That is a thumbs up. But it means he has no excuses. And when you don't have any excuses as the quarterback of an NFL team, you're under a lot of pressure. And in his second year as a second-round pick, we've talked a lot about how this is the prove-it year for Will Levis. You have got to this season, if nothing else, prove to folks that you're the guy that they should be going into 2025, 2026 with you at the helm, building around you. There's a lot of inherent pressure there. And when you have upgraded the wide receivers in the way that they have, you've got 3 bona fide starting NFL caliber receivers, veterans, guys that are going to make your life easy. They're going to be reliable, QB friendly guys that are where you need them to be, when you need them to be there. And then you've got decent depth now in NWI and Traylon Burks and maybe Kyle Phillips, we'll see. The offensive line situation. You've got 3 out of 5 guys up front that should be reliable, trustworthy. Like at least one side of your line should not get you murdered every single time you drop back. The new head coach offensive scheme situation could not be a more advantageous upgrade from what Mike Vrabel was to what Brian Callahan is going to be for you. Not just the fact that he's so offensive minded and he's going to be the play caller and all these things, but more importantly, we've heard him talk a lot recently about how his philosophy is it's not about your system or your way or the highway. It's about the coaches that best tailor the team that they have, the situation that they have to their game plan, tailoring it to the situation, the team that they have. Those are the guys that are the most successful in the NFL. And so he's looking to make a bespoke offense for this guy. That's another reason why you better work, because they're doing it for you, man. Like, this is not you coming in to relieve Ryan Tannehill last year and you just got to make it work in the system that was designed for him. Nobody, this is yours. And then finally, the full offseason as a starter. Like, you've got all offseason, you're getting starter reps, you got time to develop chemistry with these guys. Unlike last year where it's like, well, he's thrown in there at the last minute. You know, what are you going to do? You didn't have time to prepare. You got all the time in the world to prepare this time, man. You're in there. It's time. You got to make it happen. I think there's a lot of pressure on him.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And this would have been my first pick, but then as I gave you the bone, I think my reasoning for not taking this is because this has been the narrative the entire time, right? This is a very established narrative.
It's a layup.
It's a little bit of a layup, but it is the grand Will Levis experiment here, right? It is this. We've given you the pieces. We've given you the control. You are the variable. Go out and prove to us correct that this can work. And I think that's why he's under a lot of pressure. I totally agree with you that he probably is the most. I didn't pick him because I thought, it was very obvious, but yeah.
All right. So we're moving on to the under pressure draft for the rest of the AFC South, the Jaguars, Colts, and Texans. Before we do, just the recap for the under pressure draft for the Tennessee Titans. JT, he thinks Nicholas Petit-Frere, Kyle Phillips, and Amy Adams Strunk are the 3 individuals in the Titans organization under the most pressure. I went with Bill Callahan, Rand Carthon, and Will Levis. If you were with us live, real quick, let's sell the show a little bit, JT. If you're watching with us live on YouTube, we appreciate you being here. Let us know who's winning so far, as we got 3 more picks each in the AFC South. I think we'll agree more on these than we do on the Titans ones, but maybe there'll still be some debate here. Hit subscribe if you're on YouTube, hit like, all of those things that can help us out. We appreciate you guys doing that for us. And then if you can hit retweet and like on Twitter, if you're over there, massively, massively helpful to us. Be a friend, tell a friend. That's what we always say. So let's get to the AFC South portion of this under pressure draft, JT. You got the first pick with the Titans. So I get the first pick with the rest of the division. And my number 1 overall pick is Dougie P. Give me Doug Pederson, head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here's an interesting thing I think folks may not realize. JT, if you take out the 2017 Super Bowl run that the Eagles went on with Doug Pederson and Nick Foles, you got a statue for it out front. To his credit, Doug Pederson really milked that Super Bowl thing, didn't he? I mean, he got all of what he could out of it. If you take that season out where they went 13-3, as a head coach, he's under 500, 47-50 all time. Never won more than 9 games in a season as a head coach, except for that 1 year with Carson Wentz and then with Nick Foles. And he's been smooth sailing despite it being not horrible, but, kind of a definitely an underwhelming situation so far with the Jaguars. Because he came in, he was the replacement for Urban Meyer. The bar could not have been set any lower at that moment in time for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He comes in, and that comparison, you just coast on that. But I think that's kind of wearing off now. The specter in our minds of Urban Meyer seems like the distant past. And now it's like, hey, Doug, what are you doing with this team? Because you have a guy that was dubbed, you go to his Pro Football Reference page. One of his nicknames is the Prince that was promised. We all here know that was Chigakonkwo. But he was the Prince that was promised. He was the most highly touted quarterback prospect to come out of the college ranks in years. What are we doing with him? Like, what are we doing with this team around him? And from a play calling, you're supposed to be the offensive guy, Doug. You come in, and some of your coaching decisions frustrating. You're giving play calling responsibilities to other coaches on your team whose names I'm totally blanking on. Press Taylor. I think it's Press Taylor. Press Taylor was calling the plays at one point last year for the Jaguars. Why, Doug? It wasn't going well. People were very frustrated with his play calling. Like, what? Why is that something that you're doing when you're supposed to be the offensive guy? Can you imagine midseason this year? Suddenly we find out, Brian Callahan is given play calling responsibilities to Nick Holtz. How's that going to go over? Not good. Like, that's kind of what the Jaguars had been doing last year. And I don't know what the explanation was there. And then here's the last thing, JT. He was the quarterback or the head coach for the Eagles, gets fired, does the smart thing, spends a year taking it off, then became a highly coveted a head coaching candidate that cycle after a year off, comes in for the Jaguars. If he gets fired, when historically, the correct way of phrasing this is when he gets fired from the Jaguars job, is he getting another opportunity, be a head coach somewhere? I think this is it for him. I think this is his head coaching legacy. Is you got to figure it out with the Jaguars. And I'm not sure you're getting another opportunity. And so I think Doug Pederson is under an immense amount of pressure in 2024.
And I'll give you a lot of credit on there. I do tend to agree with you on a lot of that. But I think the thing
so begrudgingly,
that I think really stops it for me is that a team like the Jaguars, and there are owners out there who, much like a first round pick getting multiple chances, winning a Super Bowl, I think especially for a organization like the Jaguars, that still definitely means something no matter what. Like, he's done it once, he can do it again. And an organization like that, I think, is going to cling on to that. And, I think that he might be under pressure, but I don't think he's the most in Jacksonville, because Trent Baalke, I think, is under even more pressure than he is.
Is that your next pick?
It is a beautiful segue
himself,
into the fart man himself, Trent Baalke. I think Doug Pederson is not under as much pressure, because the pressure should be going on Trent Baalke, because we even said to ourselves, after this draft this year, that's kind of been 3 drafts in a row that have not really yielded results. I mean, you look back at some of the biggest draft picks he's made. He took Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson, which has not worked out. Last year, taking Anton Harrison, taking a Brenton Strange in the second when there were still really good options on the board, taking a Tank Bigsby in the 3rd last year.
How about this year? Just going to LSU Pro Day and calling it a day?
Exactly. Taking Brian Thomas Jr., taking Mason Smith when there were better options.
There were 3 LSU defensive linemen in the draft, and he picked the 2 worst ones. Yeah.
Taking these kind of guys. Doug Pederson, I think, with Trevor Lawrence, I think those two are definitely kind of hitched now at the hip, Trevor Lawrence and Doug Pederson. But what has really Trent Baalke done around those 2 major pieces to make this a team that actually scares you? You look at that defense still, and after 3 drafts here, it still isn't one that really pops out saying, man, they have so many dogs that can really get to the quarterback. Or
what's the strength of that defense? What do you hang your hat on?
Exactly. You put a Josh Allen, maybe?
Josh Allen.
In a resurgent year, but that's 1 year outside of what he did his rookie year. There's a lot of unproven points to that defense. And then you look at the offensive side of the ball. You still look at that wide receiver room after signing Gabe Davis and drafting Brian Thomas Jr., and you still look at it like there are a lot of question marks about what Brian Thomas Jr. can be at the next level. Gabe Davis not necessarily is a 1. Christian Kirk has a nice connection with Trevor Lawrence, but it doesn't scream at you like this is a dangerous offensive team that can put up a bunch of points on you. As much as Doug Pederson can get this team somewhere, Trent Baalke is not really given them the amount of weapons and ammo needed to really make a run in this AFC South that has seen teams around it like the Colts and Texans really just get really, really good and have these dangerous offensive weapons.
Right. I think this is a fair one to have on the list for sure. And I have to be consistent. My point earlier about punching your quarterback a doomsday clock. Baalke has done that with Trevor Lawrence. But the reasons why I'm kind of skeptical if he's kind of a cockroach. I'm not sure he can ever die. He survived Urban Meyer, which that was his thing. And he stuck around. He's had the number 1 overall pick and used it not to great success so far. He's made a handful of very easily, as you pointed out, very easily criticizable draft decisions. Criticizable, that's a word, right? And then there was at least some reporting that indicated Doug Pederson I went back and looked at this today. When they hired Doug Pederson, he wasn't the Jaguars' first choice, and that they were trying to hire Brian Leftwich, but he wanted to bring his own GM, so they ended up going with Dougie P. The owner down there, Khan, who was his first name? Shad Khan? I think it's Shad. Mr. Khan, the owner of the Jaguars, Weird fella. And I just don't know if he's just kind of content with Trent. Like, what's it gonna take for him if Trevor is a bust? Are you sure he's getting fired? I don't know. Like, I don't know how that operation works down there. So that's my only pushback.
Yeah, the Jaguars are a weird organization. I think they might show up again or two on this list of people who are under pressure. So,
well, let's move on here. Here's my second pick, the third overall in the AFC South pressure draft. Again, this is not including the Titans. We've already been down that road. So the other three teams, I don't want to do. I don't feel good doing this. I really don't. It brings me no pleasure. However, I have to. I deal in reality. I deal in truth. I deal in justice. These are tenets of who I am. And also humility is on that list as well. I have to put Anthony Richardson on this list. And the reason why, he's my quarterback won 2 years ago, loved the guy, loved the player, still love him, still think he can be awesome. But I don't know if you've noticed, JT, he's kind of already been anointed as the dude, or at least a dude, based on last year, which, fair or not, that has kind of already happened. And when you look back, okay, he played less than 4 games, 50 completions, less than 100 attempts, 3-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio in the NFL so far. Like, I don't know why exactly. Like, I get that it was an exciting less than 4 games that we saw of him, less than a month worth of football. Despite, you take the injuries out, you just some promising things, showed some flashes. Definitely the guy you're rocking with going into this year. Not saying he's not. But is he like your future? Is he your franchise? Are you building around him the way you would a CJ Stroud? No. He's not even close to have has he proven himself any more than Will Levis has? How about that question? What has Anthony Richardson done in his less than 4 games to ingratiate himself to football watchers as the guy in Indianapolis that Will Levis didn't do in his 9 games with the Titans last year? I don't think there really was much. I think they both flashed enough to be the guy this year and then, figure it out from there. That doesn't even begin to mention, hey, what happens if he gets hurt again? This guy, like, he came into the NFL, he's very young, he's very athletic, sustained a concussion that made him miss time last year, and then ultimately the shoulder surgery that required him to miss the rest of the season. He's back, the shoulder's good to go, we've heard, but if he misses significant time, or again, God forbid, all of the season, what do you do? Like, the pressure on him to stay available and also be very good, I think, is extremely high in 2024.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on the second part for sure. I think the most pressure is on him just being available. Seeing more than 3.5, 4 games out of him is going to be the biggest thing for this team. And why I say that is because I think that, with Shane Steichen in the building, like this is his guy, through and through. That's what they wanted. And so we saw the flashes, but I think really Shane Steichen has this offense down into what he truly wants it to be. So I think that's more of an extension of what Shane Steichen can do versus Anthony Richardson is just that, he's the muscle hamster athletic freak that is going to be the gateway, for Shane Steichen to make this offense truly cook. Not saying that on his own, he's super talented, but putting that pair together, it's kind of like Shane Steichen getting a Jalen Hurts, 2.0 with some extra beef on him right there. Right. So like with that being said, I agree with you that the availability thing is the biggest part. And I see what you're saying with some of the flashes, right? I think we could see more of those flashes if he just stays healthy. So that's why I think, definitely that's the biggest part for me.
Yeah. Okay. I don't disagree with any of it. So I think, we are much, the first half of this episode drove us apart, but I think we're being pulled back together for our agreed disdain for certain individuals in the rest of the AFC South. Who's your second pick? Who is your second guy in the AFC South under the most pressure?
My second guy in the AFC South who is under the most pressure is Texans offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik. Going into year 2 with CJ Stroud, you saw what he can be, which is a top 5 quarterback in the league. Bobby Slowik goes on a tour of maybe getting hired away.
Hot candidate.
He was a very hot candidate going into the end of the offseason, but then you start to hear some things. There are rumbling that, things are between him and some of the players. Like there might be a disconnect there. It's not this amazing thing, maybe I even, can see some connections to maybe he's the new kind of Eric Bieniemy, where he is this very good offensive mind. His offensive mind,
That's crazy.
But can he be a head coach? Like, how does he, connect with his players? Those are a lot of questions that I think people started to have in his first tour. So I think this year is a big one, because if he can continue to make this offense, be really, really good with even better pieces. A Joe Mixon now, Stephon Diggs is in the in the fold there. They, continue to have a really solid offensive line. If this guy continues to cook, I think it helps to alleviate some of that pressure come the next cycle. But if you start to see some hiccups as well, and you start to hear more of these things that, the connection there with his players is not the greatest, I think for the Texans and also for his job chances to be a head coach down the road here, I think that is the biggest pressure point for him this offseason and into the season.
I have so little notes on this. I agree. The locker room discord thing was absolutely a thing that I heard from people in the NFL. I don't know, it may be overblown, but to say like, no, there was none. No, I have it on good account. There was some issues there. And then, the head coach candidate on paper thing, like the offense at his disposal this year at the Texans. Talk about a no excuses. You cannot afford to underachieve with that group. And I think he left some things to be desired in terms of patterns, predictability, scheme, creativity, decision making, actually having some bespoke game planning thing. Like his first year as a OC, so like I'm willing to hear him out for year 2, but I think he's under a lot of pressure. So I agree entirely. Here's my third and final one, JT. And we're sticking with the Texans in the my final pick here for the pressure draft in the AFC South. Give me CJ Stroud. I think CJ Stroud is under immense pressure this year because what's the margin for error? You're talking about a guy that has something, stands to lose something. What kind of room does he have to experience any kind of sophomore slump, any kind of growing pains? The help around him, again, just like Slowik, super no excuses vibe. Like you've got the help around you. You should. I mean, there's no reason to believe he wouldn't be, because he was awesome his first year. Fantastic. I expect him to be. But if there's any kind of hiccup, like here's the ultimate question, JT. When was the last time? Who was the last guy that was this hyped up after his first season? Was this pre-anointed? Going into year 2, it's like everyone's already kind of thinking, I don't know if he's top 5 in the NFL at quarterback, but like he's right there. If you told me he's in your top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL, I wouldn't argue too hard. It's Patrick Mahomes, right? Like that. I can't think of the last time before Patrick. There were guys, but after Patrick, I don't know who was this hyped after his first year, and he deserves that hype. But the pressure comes with the hype, and I think that CJ Stroud is under a ton of it this year.
Yeah, I think you could also maybe put, if Patrick Mahomes got a grace year and then, really took off, you could also say Lamar is maybe in that same thing where, the expectations, especially in his first year where he didn't play all the snaps, he played like half, and then, kind of showed those flashes and then really hit the ground running. CJ Stroud does that in his first year. It's like, this is a guy that I think.
Yeah, but even then, Lamar won the MVP that year, right? That first
in his second year. Yeah.
So second year. So I don't think, maybe I'm misremembering it. I don't think we were going into that season thinking MVP favorite Lamar Jackson. With Mahomes, I think we were. And with Stroud, like, I would go look it up. My phone doesn't work anymore. I don't know what the MVP market is. I would bet a significant amount of money he is near the top of the list as a potential MVP because he fits all the criteria. Like, fantastic first year, young player, rookie contract, got a ton of help around him, hot team. I think he should be on that list, but like there's pressure to perform there. And we have seen guys in their second year of the NFL, like defensive coordinators have film on you and they've been grinding it all summer long, buddy. They're going to find ways to break you, and it's up to you to change. It's up to you to adapt and stay one step ahead. And I'm not saying he can't be that, but that's one of the big things why we see guys have struggles in the second year of fully starting for a team. Being the dynamo, being the guy that not just is a fantastic quarterback, but this team, like they are putting it on you, man. Like they're going to ride or die with you as they should, but that means you're under a lot of pressure to perform because you are the straw that stirs the drink.
Yeah, I definitely can see that one, and I agree that avoiding a sophomore slump is the biggest thing for CJ Stroud upcoming. And so that leads, I guess, to the last pick here,
last pick,
going to be a guy that I think you and the audience have very different opinions on. The last guy that I think is under the most pressure that could be under the most pressure this season is Trevor Lawrence. Going back to those Jaguars, look, they picked up.
We think the Jags are under a lot of pressure this year, guys.
They
could
better
blow
be,
up after this year. The whole thing could be a disaster.
They pick up Trevor Lawrence's 5th-year option, so he's going into, I believe, year 4. So he's got one more. So he's under contract still. But then again, we start to see in this last kind of year, right before the 5th-year option, this is really where the contract talk really starts to heat up. And, he has a little bit of a difference of situation around him. Joe Burrow and the Trevor Lawrences and all these guys may have had some help with some of the better offensive weapons in the past couple of years where Trevor Lawrence may have not had that.
Sure.
But you still have to remember that, when we were talking about Caleb Williams this offseason, we're like, when was the last time you saw a prospect this good? Well, everyone starts to talk about Trevor Lawrence, and he has not really figured it out. And even though he had a slow start with a really bad situation, last year I think was the year we were really expecting a breakout from him, and we really didn't see that. He continued to still struggle. And so with that kind of next step in the contract talk kind of coming down the pipeline here, Trevor Lawrence, I think, is under immense pressure, not only for this team who, ended the year on a huge losing streak, but also for his own monetary gain, trying to be one of these top earning quarterbacks. He's under immense pressure to make this work with probably the most weapons he's been given. I wouldn't say they're the most, exciting weapons, but these are the most weapons he's been given to use at his disposal out of any year. So I think he has a lot to prove.
Yeah, wins aren't a quarterback stat, but when we're looking at his resume, Trevor Lawrence, 3 years now in the NFL, he has won 1 playoff game. He has won 1 division title. Fine. But perhaps more importantly, he has blown 2 opportunities to get to the playoffs in the 11th hour of the season. And wait, is this? No, I think he's done 4 full years, because his first year, they certainly didn't make it to the playoffs. And they've blown 2 opportunities. So actually, I think he's done 4 full tours here. We can fact check that. Yeah. But the point being, he's blown it twice. They've blown it twice. And despite that, he's going to get paid. Like, this guy's getting $50, $55, $60 million a year, this new contract. It's a matter of when, not if. And he's being asked, as you mentioned, like, he's got weapons at his disposal, but he's being asked to elevate this offense. Like, when you're bringing in Gabe Davis, and Brian Thomas Jr. is your first-round pick, but, he's a little bit on the raw side, and, it's Christian Kirk, and it's Gabe Davis behind him. And then at tight end, it's Evan Ingram, who's very helpful, but then, Brenton Strange. Like, he's being asked to elevate this offense a decent amount. I think a fair amount for his caliber of talent. And I think that he's under a lot. I'm not going to disagree with anybody who are like, I think the Jaguars are under pressure, and in particular, it's this guy. I think they're all under pressure. Like, besides Josh Allen and
he just got paid. Yep.
I mean, like, Brian Thomas Jr., not yet because he's a rookie, but like besides maybe those guys, I think they're all, the entire team, under pressure. They could all be losing their jobs this year if things don't go well.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, guys, that was it. That was fun. Jot that down. We're doing that again every year, if not twice a year. Maybe we'll do it again before training camp starts. Who knows? A little training camp pressure list, because that is a fun debate. I hope you guys enjoyed today's show. If you hated it, keep it to yourself. If you liked it, let us know. No, tell us whether you liked it or hated it. If you don't want to see it again, just let us know. We won't do it again. But I had a lot of fun. JT, I appreciate you being here. All the folks in the comments appreciate you guys being here. We'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be at OTAs, JT and I, on Wednesday. So on Tuesday, we'll be talking about, we'll figure it out. We'll talk about something interesting then. Until then, have a fantastic weekend. For producer JT, I'm your host, Easton Freeze. From the Hot Read Podcast, make sure you're following us, liking, subscribing, all those things. Be a friend, tell a friend. We'll talk to you next time.